fellow 6th grade artists. So some of you were a little bit concerned about working on your shading for the Ionic or for the Corinthian types of columns. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick little video for one for each. They will not be fully detailed simply because I do want you guys to use the techniques from what I showed you on the Doric column and then just kind of modify them for the other two. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and show you especially the swirly portion of the Ionic. So once again, I'm going to draw a light source. I'm going to actually put it a little lower this time, because this is my light source for the Ionic. Okay, now remember, wherever your light source is hitting your column, that is where the lightest, brightest highlight part of that column will be. So once again, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so that we can see this portion best. And since this is where my highlight is, then this side of all of my swirly portions are going to be the darkest. So I'm going to start furthest away because remember still, even though you're going to have highlights and shadows on this side, it's all going to be lighter than this side will be simply because it's closer to your light source. So the darkest part is back here because it's the furthest away from our light source. So I'm just going to start kind of shading the same way we did over here. And I'm going to turn my page again. Because remember, a lot of shading is about figuring out which direction helps you the most in terms of what way your paper is turned. And I'm just going to get lighter and lighter as I go in. I'm going to do a whole bunch of just smaller value scales kind of going around. That's what it's called when you do shading from dark to light. It's kind of like a value scale. So once again, one of the most important things that we can do when we are shading is just to continue practicing making sure that our value transitions are nice and smooth. So I'm just going to get this spot nice and dark. Press down less and less as I move across. Move around a little bit more. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to kick the camera there. So then this part is going to be the same thing. It's going to be darkest on the side that's furthest away. And then we're going to get lighter as we move toward the middle. So remember, we are still going to be shading in layers. So even though this is my first layer of shading on this little swirly part, that does not necessarily mean that it is my last layer. So then this part in the middle, same thing. Notice too that I'm curving my shading. I'm not shading like in a straight line across this part because it is kind of like a sphere, or kind of like a ball. So we do want to make sure that that sort of ball-like look comes across by using curved lines to shade there. Go back out a little bit, add another bit of a layer here. Because remember, each layer that I add, we're going to darken the shadow spaces and fade them into the next little portion of gray. And then I'm going to turn my page because I am still going to shade all the way around that sort of swirly. But then when I get about here, I'm going to fade it into the white of the paper because the shading is going to shift a little bit because of where my light source is. Because now on this particular portion, this side is going to be lighter because my light source is here. So this is going to be the lighter side and this is going to be the darker. So I'm going to turn my page again for shading. And this time I'm going to kind of do the opposite of what I've done so far. Still doing a little gradient in there, but now it's going to be darkest on the inside part because of where my light source is. And then those in-between parts will just kind of be gray. Gonna darken this part up a little bit so that I get some more crispness in there, a bit of a fuller range of values. And I'm gonna do the same thing right here. Darkest on the inside, and then it will quickly get lighter as it moves out. And then I'd be ready to go ahead and just kind of add any more definition or any darker spots within those swirlies to kind of make things stand out a little bit more. Still making sure that I fade it into the next thing. So that is how both of your swirlies would be done, but this one is ultimately going to be darker than this one. So I may still be adding more layers to this particular swirly, but this particular swirly might only get one layer. So then the spots that are kind of behind the swirls, we're going to just make nice and dark. Same way we did over here on these spaces, because they are sort of underneath the swirls. So we want to make sure that they look nice and dark, kind of like shadows in there. But just like we did on the top of the Doric column, it is still going to get lighter as I move across that space. Not much lighter, remember, but a little bit lighter. So what having this nice little shadow here does is also help make this highlight look brighter because it's right next to a dark spot. So then all these spaces that are in between these little nubs, I'm going to make pretty dark. But once again, once I'm on this section, this spot and this spot, they'll still be pretty dark, but not quite as dark as they are on this particular side. And then these portions, my little nubs, are going to be shaded the same way the center of the swirl was. So basically the darkest part is furthest away from the highlight or from the light source. I'm going to turn my page here. And then I'm going to be shading across, but still in a curved line. And since my light source is kind of low, I'm going to make the top portion darker than the bottom portion. So that might be an example of how all of these little nubs would be completed. This portion will be done the same way that this was. This portion, the bands here, same way all of this was. So the last thing I want to show you is just a little bit of this, which is basically going to be done the same way that the snaky part of the column was. So it's going to be darkest furthest away. So that corner is going to be darkest, and then it's going to get lighter as I move across. So I'm pressing down less and less with my pencil. And remember, you can do this with a colored pencil the same exact way. But our goal is to make sure that we have nice smooth colors and smooth value transitions so that we don't end up with lots of extra pencil marks. But then on this portion, what I'm also going to do is a bit of a gradation from the top going down. Because my light source is so low. So again, just a gradation from the top going down. So that the lightest part is right here, because that would be the most directly hit part by our light source. Same thing for this little one. Get lighter as I move down that space, but then also darker on this side and lighter as I move across that space. And remember that you can use that reflected light like I've done here to separate the shadows. So that I would do the same thing on the bottom portion of this one as I did in this little spot, where I have the dark value, but I leave a little white gap in between the dark value of the next part. So on this particular portion, that's exactly what I would do to separate the darkness of this from the darkness of that. So hopefully that helps you guys a little bit with your Ionic column. Remember, zooming back out, the bands here and the top portion will be done identically to the way that we did them on the Doric. And then the same thing with the fluting. It's going to be darkest along the side here, getting lighter as I move across. But for this one, because my light source is higher than this particular part, it's going to be a little bit darker on the side and not quite as dark towards the top. But it will still be a little bit darker because it is still a shadow. So I will continue working on this example a little bit so that you guys can see it in class. But that's going to be it in terms of Ionic shading videos.